ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا أنت مولانا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good to be back. As you may know, in the last couple of weeks, with Samah Sayyid Saleh and a group of some of Mecca's brothers and sisters, we went to Umrah and Ziyarah. Alhamdulillah, we came back last night. Sayyid Saleh will be back, inshallah, tomorrow. He went for the Ziyarah of Imam Rida alayhi salam. All this time we kept you all in our prayers. We ask Allah to grant you the ziyarah of the Umrah, especially nowadays that we enter the month of Rajab. As you know, Umrah Rajabiyya is something would be nice to have, and we ask Allah to grant us the Umrah, inshallah, in the coming days and the coming years. There's not much to announce, no announcements as far as I know, so maybe there is, but inshallah we'll remind you later. But for now, please help me welcome Samahat Sheikh Abdulrahman Cherri after Allah salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
This was on this side last week, right? I think. Thank you very much. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, respected brothers and sisters and brothers, just in case. I know some people are sensitive about the order of this, so we'll alternate so nobody gets sad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your amal, your prayers, your fasts, as we enter the three sacred months. This being the month of Rajab, which is the first of the three sacred ones. I was asked last week to continue the theme that I was speaking about, which was related to family issues. Last week we spoke about the relationship between the parents and the children. But because of the timing of today and being the beginning of Rajab, and the announcement that was made on the flyer also coincided with it being the merits of Rajab, I thought I'd stick to this theme, and inshallah on some other occasion I'll be able to speak about the family issues on a deeper level, inshallah. So as we enter the sacred months, the three sacred months in Islam, which are the months of Rajab, Sha'ban, and Ramadan. These 3 months are specific months throughout the year where God had told us to pay extra attention to. They differ from the other months of the year. There are certain things that occur during these months and certain events that make them distinguished and different from the other months. Now we have narrations that describe these months by giving them a specific title. So in the opinion of the general people, the masses, Shahr Ramadan is the greatest month. And then you have Sha'ban next, and then you have Rajab as the third. So if you take it that way, Rajab is the first step towards reaching that goal, which is Shahr Ramadan. So you begin by preparing yourself from now until you reach that level. But there are people with different levels of spirituality. There's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who has the highest level of irfan or ma'rifah of God, the gnosis of God, knowing God. And then you go down after him with people with different degrees and different levels. Each individual has a different experience according to their level. They experience these events, these times, these relationships because of these occasions with God in a different way. So the more spiritual you are, the different type of relationship that you have. It's like if you love someone. Now, there's a type of love that you have, it's more of a caring love. You don't really experience that romantic feeling, right? You have the thing, where you get to know someone, maybe your spouse or your family member or a friend, and the type of love that you have for them is a caring love. You show them care, you give them attention, you work for them, and nothing goes beyond that. There's not really much of an emotional attachment to them. Now, some parents might have this type of relationship with their children. They feel like I'm a father or a mother, and it's mostly on the father's side. I don't have to express a lot of emotion towards my child. They don't have that type of love relationship. Or a spouse, a husband and a wife, or a wife and a husband. Perhaps the way they got married, maybe it was arranged marriage, maybe it was, families who knew each other. They said, this is a good person for you. And they got to know that person. And that relationship stayed on that level and never really evolved emotionally. So this is someone who, you got married to and you want to raise a family with. So you get along with one another. You talk to each other every now and then, but there's nothing really emotionally tying you, both of you together. And then you have people who they have deeper emotions. They have emotions and they have feelings towards the other person. They care about the individual, not just on the outer level, but really on a deep personal, emotional level. They love that person. Now, that also differs in degrees. You're chatting with your spouse, or you're talking on the phone, or somebody say, oh, I love you. Oh, I love you too, or I love you more, things like that. That might not be expressing the deepest level of love. It could be one level of love, because love is described as a gradational reality. I don't know if you've heard about this concept or term, but if you go to Islamic philosophy, they use this term to describe the reality of God and the world. They say it's a gradational reality. They compare it to light. If you take a light light bulb, let's say, or a source of light like the sun or the light bulb or a candle, or anything that emits light. The closer you get to the source of the light, where the light comes out from. So the bulb itself has the brightest light next to the bulb, right? The strongest light. Now, the more you move away from the bulb, the source of light, the weaker that light becomes, right? So you have a light here. This is the most lit area. The more you move out and you move away from it, the weaker the light becomes until it becomes darkness. What they call this gradational, which means it has grades of intensity. The closer you are to the source, more intense it is. The farther away you go, the less intense it is. So if we talk about love, love is like that. It's comparable to light. It's gradational. There's different grades. So not every time you read the word love, it's referring to the same amount of love or the same understanding that you have of love. It might mean something else. So when in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, if you love the God and the Prophet, then follow the Prophet. Your love has to be accompanied with action. This is a certain type of love, where your love is reflected in your behavior. It's not just something you claim. It's not something you announce with your tongue. You might feel it, but it's not so intense that it's reflecting in your own behavior. You might have something of 1% love towards the individual. You have a nice feeling, I love you. You do have that feeling of care, you have that feeling of giving attention, but it's not so intense as to obey that individual. And obedience on the deepest level of love isn't an obedience like we would look at dictators, how they command people to obey them and listen to them, and they do it out of fear. No. A person doesn't feel subservient in a bad way to the person that they love. If you love an individual deeply, you would do everything they want, not because they're telling you to do it out of authority and command, but rather because you love that individual. You see yourself dissolved in that individual. You're absorbed in them. You don't want to do anything that displeases them, nothing that bothers them. So a person with this type of attachment and love with God has a different type of experience during these nights and days. And of course, throughout their life, but specifically these. So we have the urafat, the scholars who they describe as mystics, right? They're on a very deep level of spirituality. They look at the ahadith and they find another group of ahadith where the Prophet says that Rajab is the month of God, Shahrullah. So this is inversed, right? So you think that Shahr Ramadan is the best month, but to these urafat, Rajab is the greatest month for them because it's the month of God. And then it goes based on 1, 2, 3. So Rajab, Sha'ban, and then Ramadan like that. And this is the internal experience that they have. So they begin their deepest relationship and connection with God in this month. But this is for a specific group of people. The Prophet says that Shahru Ramadan is Shahru Ummati, right? It's for the general people. So for us as general individuals, someone like me, I want to first work my way up in order to be able to experience the greatness of Rajab, where the Prophet used to consider it the greatest month in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for us as regular individuals, we have to begin with the outer journey. We begin on the outside. We follow these gradual steps. We begin with Shahr Rajab. We start to train ourselves to reach that month of Ramadan. That will be our goal. The month of Ramadan includes fasting. It includes supplications, prayers, a certain type of dedication, and a certain type of discipline that we don't usually have throughout the year. So because it's very difficult for a person to change their habits overnight, it's very important for us to use the months before the month of Ramadan to begin to change those bad habits that we have. This is always our goal every single year. Ramadan comes, you're used to eating every single day, different types of meals, and of course we have the Mecca of food here in America, right, in Dearborn, right? Every Muslim you go to, like wherever I go, oh, Sheikh, where are you from? I'm from Dearborn. Oh, the food is amazing there. It's like, we were known about nothing except food. This is like our achievement as Dearborners. We achieved the pinnacle of food delight or whatever it is. So we're known for food here. Some people are known for making cars. Detroit, like our neighbors, like the cars, right? California, you got the computer chips and all that stuff there. Here we got the food, alhamdulillah. At least we got something. So people come from all over the country to visit here just to eat. And they don't come to get knowledge. They don't get, no, it's the food. So living in this food culture here, of course, the month of Ramadan is like the antidote, it's like the opposite of like what we experience. It is a very big challenge for someone who doesn't have control over their own appetite. And it is for any regular person. Someone who doesn't have that attachment to food is still difficult. You're fasting for a large portion of the day. You're not eating. You're not consuming water or food. And it's not something that's natural for you. Then you're going to face a big challenge. Shahr Ramadan is going to, become a month where you're trying to tolerate the suffering of not eating and not drinking. So in order to ease yourself into it, you have these 2 months that you can use to prepare yourself, especially if you know that you're of those individuals who cannot tolerate drastic changes in your life, especially when it comes to your eating habits. So it's recommended that during these months, you fast as much as you can. Not only to train yourself, there's benefit in fasting in the months themselves, but our intention could be for this. Every week, I'm going to fast 1 day, just to break that habit. And not only to prepare yourself for Ramadan, but also to train yourself that after the month of Ramadan, you don't want to break that habit of fasting. It's recommended to fast throughout the year. There are 3 days of every month that are very recommended. The 13, 14, and 15, right? Layal al-Bid, the white night, or Ayam al-Bid, or 14, 15, 16. So these days are recommended to fast every single month. But if we put in our minds that Ramadan is the only month that I'm going to fast in because God has obligated this month, then it proves to us that we as human beings, we really do need God to force us to do things. Because if He didn't force us to fast Ramadan, would we ever fast? Most of us, I'm saying. Hardly do we ever volunteer to do things like this, right? Fasting, extra prayers, extra du'as. We don't really do these in our lives because we're so occupied with other things. So we want to change that perspective, that mentality that we have. I'm going to start fasting in Rajab, even if it was 1 day. Instill that in yourself. That I'm going to do a recommended fast. Because I want to get myself into the habit of doing recommended acts outside of the areas where God has forced me to do them. I don't want my relationship with God to be that one where I only do what He forces me to do. It's like that child in a house. They only obey the father or mother because they're forced to. The moment they're out of the house or the parents are not looking, they do their own thing. You don't want that type of relationship with God, and God doesn't want that relationship with you either. He wants a relationship to be based on mutual love and care. But because as human beings we neglect ourselves, our attention is on the outside for most of the time and not the inside, God is forced to force us to try to create an awakening inside of ourselves. So this is one thing that we can keep in mind. This year I'm going to fast at least 1 day in Rajab. If you can do more, it's even better. But at least 1 day to instill in myself that I'm going to do recommended acts outside of the areas where I'm obliged to do. This is going to reflect in your daily life as well. Extra prayers that you do. How beautiful is it for a person just randomly to get up and do wudu, purify yourself, and stand on the prayer mat and tell Allah, I'm standing here because I want to pray 2 rak'ahs for you, just to thank you. You didn't tell me to do this. You haven't forced me to do this. But I'm going to do it because you've given me so many beautiful things in my life. Every single day you gave me so much blessings. I want to get up, and whatever these prayers I'm doing, they have no value in and of themselves. It's not like I'm thanking God or I'm giving Him enough of thanks for what He's given me. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciates that. To get up and to say, Allah, I'm going to pray 2 rak'ahs. This is from the bottom of my heart. You did not ask me to do this. You did not force me to do this. I want to do this because I want to appreciate, I want to show you I appreciate what you're giving me. Even if it was 2 sincere rak'ahs. Throughout our life, How many times have we done this? If God wants to treat us the way we treat him, then he should neglect us throughout the whole year. We don't give him attention, we don't care for him, we don't talk to him as much as we should, right? And then if we come and we perform 2 rak'ahs from the bottom of our hearts, that might be the opening, the spiritual opening that we're asking for. Allah will appreciate it so much. He will give you something and much more in return. So we have to begin to try to change this type of relationship that we have with God, especially here in the West. We have this opportunity because the culture that we're growing in here, or that we've grown in, is a culture that doesn't really instill this idea of dictatorship or authority in the general type of relationships that we have in the society. You know, sometimes if you're growing in a family where the father or the mother or the family members, the uncles, have this hierarchy of authority and they base their relationships with their children on authoritative behavior, then the child usually grows up thinking that God is also authoritative like that. Whenever they picture God like their father or their mother. You know, God is commanding me to do things. If I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to be punished, right? So there becomes a problem here. First of all, we have to get out of that state to understand that God does not behave like my parents. God doesn't have any personal grudges against me. God doesn't have any personal issues against me or with me. God doesn't deal with me as a regular human being does. You need to get yourself out of that state and mentality. And then you move on to contemplating and thinking about the type of relationship that God has with you. Okay, I want to understand, how does God look at me? How should my relationship with him be? And you contemplate. You look around you. In our du'as, the imams teach us a lot of things, a lot of key ideas that will help us understand this type of relationship. They tell us that thank God, the one who gives you blessings before you even ask for them. This is a type of relationship that God has with you. He's so loving and caring for you that before you ask for the thing, he gives it to you. What type of relationship does that resemble? I think in the home, most of the time the mother would be like that, where the mother feels what the child wants, and she kind of understands what her child wants, and she makes sure that she can give the child that thing even before they ask for it. The moment that the child desires something, you want to provide it for that child. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at us that way. The moment we feel for something, that I want something, God wants to give it to us, even before we ask for it. And we see it in our lives many times. You know, in the ahadith and the commentaries of our ulama, when they talk about prayers and supplications, they tell us that dua isn't only what you say with your mouth. It's not only what you ask for verbally. There can be the dua of the heart too, that God also looks at and God also answers. Sometimes you're sitting down and you just desire something. Allah listens to that because God says that he knows the whispers inside of our hearts. He knows the language that we speak, the speech that we have inside of our souls. So he gives us these blessings before we even ask for them. He forgives us for so many transgressions that we do. So there are so many things that God overlooks. And this is how we should understand our relationship with him. If he's such a loving God, such a caring God, such a God that gives us this love and wants it on the deepest level, then I have to change my perspective of him. I shouldn't look at him as this dictator or a being that only wants to punish me and wants to force me to do things in order to get some self-satisfaction, right? A lot of dictators, they love this feeling of authority and power. Why do they order the people below them or beneath them to do things? Is because it has a self-satisfaction for them, right? Well, God doesn't have that. He doesn't need to feel satisfied personally. So when he commands me to do something, I have to understand that that command is there because of a benefit for myself. I have to change that perspective. Why does God want me to do this and not do that? Why does he put so many limitations on me? Well, we all know as human beings that we cannot live without limitations. We need them. We need something to regulate our lives. But the way you go about understanding why God does it is also very important. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salam categorizes the people into three, right? He said that there are some people who view God in a transactional way. That I'm going to do this salat because I want to get this benefit and reward. And this is the relationship of a businessman, of a merchant. And there are certain people before Islam, this is how they used to deal with God, right? Whenever God wanted something from them, they would tell him, okay, we'll do it for you, but you do this in return. Or, a group of people in Mecca, when Islam was revealed through the angel Gabriel alayhi salam. In the Quran, this incident is mentioned. There was a group of people who belonged to the religion of Judaism in Mecca at that time. There was a certain group of people who objected to the Prophet. And he told them, look, we believe in God. We believe in the messengers. We believe he sends angels. We believe in God's message, in what Moses and David brought, alayhimus salam. But we have a problem with Gabriel. Throughout the years, Gabriel was the one who kept bringing God's punishments to us. We don't like this guy. So we'll accept Islam, we'll accept the message, if God sends Michael instead, the angel Mikael. Tell God, go back to God and tell him, let him send the revelation through Mikael, through Michael, and we'll accept it. But as long as it comes from Gabriel, this guy, we just don't want to hear from him. We have a toxic relationship with Gabriel. So as long as it's from him, we're not going to accept it. And Allah then revealed in the Quran that whoever is an enemy to Gabriel is an enemy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. It's not you who decides how God sends his message. So there are people like that. They look at God, they only remember him when they want something. They only remember him when they need something. You feel like your life is not going the way you want, or you have opportunities that you want to reach, suddenly you become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You start praying. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's still good. Even if you're doing it for that reason, it's still good because you are trying and you are communicating with God. And God will accept it. But it's not the best that you should aim for. As a believer, you should always aim for the best in your life. The other type of relationship is based on that fear. You obey certain individuals in society, in your family household, because you're scared. And some people are like that with God. The Imam describes his individuals as the relationship being that of a slave or a servant. You have a slave master and you have a slave, or a master and a servant. The servant obeys the master because he or she is scared, not because they want to. If they had the choice, they wouldn't do it. But because God has said that if you do certain things and you don't do other things, you're going to go to hell, you're going to be punished. Based on this, they act and they move and they behave. And then the Imam gives another category, which is based on the emotion of love. And the Imam says that this is the worship of the free persons. You're free from that fear. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, the believers reach a point where they have no more fear. There's no more fear in their heart. They have tranquility, they have peace, they have proximity to the divine. And this is the relationship that the Imam says is the best type of relationship to have. And everybody can achieve it. It's just a matter of changing your perspective, your mentality, your type of behavior, your understanding of God. God doesn't hate you, God doesn't want to punish you. God doesn't want you to fail in your life. In fact, he wants the opposite. And if he ever does make things obligatory upon you, it's because there's that aspect or element of discipline that's necessary for us as human beings to have in order to perfect ourselves and improve ourselves. Because most of the time, we're not disciplined as individuals. We need laws. And sometimes even with laws, we're not disciplined. Just go out on the streets a few miles down. See the driving there. We have laws that dictate how people should drive. And still people can't follow it, and you see the chaos that happens. A lot of accidents, a lot of people losing their lives, because some people just don't want to be disciplined, where they have to be disciplined. Now, you don't have to be under laws like in an excessive manner all the time. There has to be some room for us as humans to develop ourselves. Not always do things because the law dictates for us to do that. But there is a bare minimum where we need someone to discipline us. Because if there isn't that discipline, then we're going to be chaotic and we're not going to be individuals who are able to improve ourselves. It's like somebody, who is told that, okay, you can do a test, but you can do it an infinite amount of times for your university or your school. You're never going to be motivated to study for that test because you think to yourself, okay, if I fail, I'll just do it again. If I don't do well this time, I'll do it next time. And if not next time, I have an infinite amount of times. This is how the human self is. It believes that it's going to live forever. It procrastinates. It keeps delaying things day after day after day after day. If there wasn't deadlines, most of us won't finish the work that we have to do. So discipline is an important factor in our lives. And God, when He deals with us, He deals with us as human beings, not as angels. And people used to object to God when Islam was revealed. The Quran tells us about individuals who told God, why don't you send us an angel instead of a human being? Why don't you send us another creature? Some divine, creature that, is flying in the sky or has some magical powers. Why did He send us a human prophet? Because the message is for you human beings. God used every means of communication for us as humans to understand as humans. If He sent us an angel or a Superman or someone, then we're going to always say, okay, look, that's Superman. He can do it, right? I'm not Superman. I can't do it. But God spoke to us on our level as human beings. He sent us a human prophet. He used human language to speak with us. He involves our emotions when dealing with us. And He tries to regulate our life. Why? In order for us to understand His wisdom and His care and His love and to get closer to Him. So what we can do in Rajab, to go back to the main topic, is to try to use this month to change that relationship and change that perspective. And this month I'm going to do extra things. In Ramadan I am forced to fast. There's a kind of pressure for me to read Quran. I'm going to do it voluntarily in this month. Even if it was one time, it would be good. It's a good change to do. So it's recommended to fast in this month. There are other things that are recommended as well. And that is, for example, to do certain invocations, which is dhikr, that are not recommended as much in other months. One of them is to recite La ilaha illallah, to contemplate over that, to recite it throughout the day, to think about it, that there is nothing in existence except God. There is no deity, no God to worship except God. And we have in our hadith that whoever listens to something has worshipped it. Whoever sees something has worshipped it. When you give your attention, you give your care, you give your focus and your feelings to something, that's a form of worship. You're becoming subservient to it. You're following that thing. You're allowing that thing to control you, therefore it's a form of worship. So I'm going to focus this month on saying La ilaha illallah to remove all deities from my heart, whether they're my senses that I'm using to worship those things or my heart internally. I want to purify everything. If I'm listening to something, I want to make sure that I'm listening to something that's good. If I'm saying something, I want to make sure that I'm saying something that's good. I want to cut out my bad habits. I don't want to speak negative about people. I don't want to backbite. I don't want to listen to negative things, to wrong things. I don't want to watch things that are bad for me. So these are things that we have to focus on this month. Watch over yourself so that when Ramadan comes, the month of Ramadan comes, I'm already prepared. I've already moved up the spiritual ladder. Now when I fast in the month of Ramadan, I'm not only suffering physically. In fact, I'm receiving that spiritual benefit that I'm supposed to be receiving when I'm fasting. As the Prophet said that some people, when they fast, all they get from it is hunger and suffering and pain. Whereas the Prophet and the Imams and the pious individuals, they're progressing on the spiritual level when they're fasting. They're gaining close proximity to Allah. They're purifying themselves. And this has to happen gradually. It doesn't happen overnight. So another thing that we do, La ilaha illallah, recommended to be recited 1,000 times this month. Divide it. Every day, I want to say it 10 times. I want to say it 100 times. I want to say it 50 times. And when you say it, contemplate over it. If saying it 100 means that you're not going to be thinking about it, you're just trying to finish it, then say it 10 times, but with contemplation. Close your eyes, sit in a quiet place. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Try to remove everything from your mind except God. This is one method to do in order to practice. Another thing that's mustahab to do, another invocation, is Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad. It's recommended to be recited how many times? How much? More. 10,000. Yes, 10,000 times. It's recommended. You don't have to do 10,000. They say if you can't do 10,000, do 1,000. If you can't do 1,000, do 100. If you can't do 100, do 10. If you can't do 10, do 1. Always use this when it comes to adhkar, invocations. Use this. If something is recommended to recite 1,000 times, always keep in your mind that you're also allowed to recite it 100. If you can't 100, then 10. You add zeros. If you can do 10,000, you can do more, you can do 100,000. Some people do it like that. But always do it based on your own capacity. Don't look at the number and try to force yourself to get the number. No. The number is there according to your capacity. If you can't do 10,000, you do 1,000. If you can't do 1,000, if you're not used to invoking, then start small. Because the Imam says, a small amount that's consistent is better than a large amount that's inconsistent. If I say I'm going to pray 1,000 rak'ahs every day, okay, the first day I pray them, the second day I'm starting to feel like, maybe I made the wrong decision here. The third day, you're like, God is merciful. He understands I can't do this. I'm just going to stop doing it. Okay, is that better? Or if I pray 2 rak'ahs every day for a whole year, is that better? Which one's better? The consistency. Spiritually, consistency is very important. Not the amount of a'mal that you do, but the consistency in what you do. This is a spiritual recommendation or instruction that our Prophet and the Imams and our ulama give us. Consistency is key to changing yourself internally. Don't look at the amount, the quantity. Look at your consistency. So if every day you can do an extra 2 rak'ahs, it's better to do that for a whole year than to do 100 today, 100 tomorrow for a week and then end it. Consistency. A lot of people say, oh, I'm having like an adhkar or a dua list that I want to do throughout the year. And then they keep adding and adding and adding to it until they reach a point where they can't do them and they end up leaving the whole list. That's the reaction that you get. So don't keep adding to your list. Have a small list, but be consistent with it. That's what's important. So the other recommended thing is Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Again, 10,000 is the number, but also they say 1,000, 100, 10, or 1. If you realize Qul Huwallahu Ahad and La ilaha illallah, they're connected to the divine aspect of Tawheed. Connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's where the Prophet said this is the month of God. So in this month, you want to purify yourself. You want to remove all the things that disconnect you and detach you from God. So that when Ramadan comes, all you can see is Him. Try to change your habits. You can't change all of them. Pick one habit to change. I am someone who has anger issues. And I always use this as an example because it's always a problem for most of us. And nowadays, it seems like people are just getting angry and angry and angrier. Nobody has any type of tolerance anymore. You go to the supermarket, you just, you turn around incorrectly, someone yells at you. You do something, everyone's just screaming and yelling. So if you find yourself in that position throughout the day or that situation, put that as your goal. I'm going to try in this month of Rajab, for the sake of Allah, I am going to control my anger for at least 3 days. I want to be patient. Put goals for yourself. And it happens to be that, if the month of Rajab is not good enough for you to put resolutions, then it happened to be that the beginning of the month coincided with the New Year, right? Everybody has New Year's resolutions here? Yes? No? No? Okay. Is that because it's not an Islamic thing, or is it because I don't like resolutions? Both? Okay. Well, okay, so put resolutions the next day, so it doesn't coincide with the first day. But it's always good to put goals for yourself, even if they were small ones. So don't say I'm going to become, a saint in one day. No. I want to remove one bad thing. And if you remove one bad thing from yourself, you're already above the majority of humankind, because most people don't care about improving themselves on that level. So if you can change one bad thing inside of you, then you're already ahead of so many people, you're already successful, and you've already paved the way for you to gradually improve and change to the better. So start with small goals, consistent goals. Keep that in your mind. Shaitan sometimes comes and says, Oh, you're feeling very spiritual. How about you add Surah Al-Baqarah to your salat? And then you start reading it, you start realizing, okay, I was tricked into this. Yeah, because shaitan does that. He comes through deen, through religion, to make you leave religion. As that one person who, I think I've told you the story before, that he came to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and actually the Imam was telling someone that when somebody becomes a believer, take them up the ladder gradually. Don't give them so many things that they cannot carry and it'll break them. And then he told him of the story of the man who converted to Islam. There was a guy who was a Muslim, like, you know, you have a lot of the da'wah guys, right? They go, they want to convert everyone. But they don't tell them, there's like the fine print that they don't mention to anybody. Islam is this and beautiful and Allah and Tawheed and brotherhood and this and that. This guy like, oh my God, I've never like felt this beauty in my life. Community, bonding, God, one, and good and evil. And it sounds amazing. Yalla, I want to become Muslim. All right, come, do the shahada. Does the shahada, and this is, I'm changing the story a little bit, but it's the same lines. The Imam says this guy, zayyana lahu al-Islam. He beautified Islam for this individual. So basically he did all this stuff. He marketed Islam to him, right? This is the da'wah people. Whereas Islam, it shouldn't be dealt with in this way. So this guy becomes Muslim, and the guy that converted him, he knocks on his door in the middle of the night. And that guy wakes up from his sleep, he's shocked. Like he never had anyone knock on his door this early in the morning, right? It's still dark outside, it's not even the morning. And the guy, he opens the door, he's like, oh, it's like the guy that converted him. He's like, what, is there something wrong? Did something happen? He said, no, we have to go to the masjid. We have to do salat, we have to read Quran. So this guy's new, he doesn't know anything, right? He's going to trust what this guy's telling him. So the Imam says he takes him to the masjid. It wasn't even morning prayer yet, time for morning prayer yet. It was sahar, salatul layl, night prayers. This guy's like extra vigilant. So he takes him there. The guy sits down and says, okay, now start praying, start reading Quran until the adhan comes. So the guy thinks, okay, I got to do this. So he starts reading the Quran, he starts praying, he imitates what the guy's doing. The adhan comes. They get up, they pray jama'ah together. Adhan finishes, the guy said, okay, I'm exhausted, I want to go back to sleep. I'm tired. God knows what time he slept. He wasn't planning to get up this early in the morning. So he gets up, he finishes salat, he wants to go home, and the guy tells him, no, where are you going? Where are you going? He's like, what? What's going on? I thought we finished salat. He said, yes. But dhuhr time is just in a few hours. So how about let's stay here. We have the Quran, it's good to read the Quran, it's good to do dhikr, it's good to do this and that. Let's just stay until it's dhuhr prayer. So the guy, is under pressure. He doesn't know, maybe this is the right thing. I got to obey Allah. He stays until dhuhr time. And the same thing happens. He finishes dhuhr and asr, and the guy tells him, after dhuhr and asr prayer, hey, maghrib is just in a few hours, especially if it's a winter night, right? The difference between dhuhr and the time between dhuhr and maghrib is very short, only a few hours. So the guy stays. He prays maghrib and isha, and as soon as he was done, this guy flew to the house. He went back home. The next morning, again, before Fajr time, he hears a knock on the door. The guy opens the door, and he sees his Muslim guy that converted him was standing over there. He's like, what do you want? He's like, we have to go to the masjid. He's like, get out of here, you and your religion. I don't want to have anything to do with you. The Imam says this, that the guy that brought him into Islam is the same guy that took him out of Islam. Why? Because the guy, he can't handle this much. Take him slowly and gradually. So shaitan uses this method. He throws weight on us in the name of religion, in the name of being good and spiritual, in order to get us out of spirituality. This is one of the tactics that he uses. So be careful. One of the equations or formulas that our scholars give us is that only do as much as you can do on your worst day. The worst spiritual, when you're feeling the lowest spiritual feeling that you have, what you can do on that day is what you're going to use as your schedule for the rest of the year. Because you want to be able to be consistent, right? That's your goal. To be consistent, then you have to be able to do these things because you have days where you're going to be very low. Some days you're spiritually high, some days you're spiritually low. So you have to be able to maintain that consistency, which means on your worst day, how much can you do? 5 salat, or 5 dhikrs, or 5 du'as? Yes. If that's how much you can do on your lowest day, then even if on other days you feel much better spiritually and you can do much more, don't do them as part of your consistent program. If you want to read an extra chapter on that day, okay. But don't make your program based on, oh, I'm feeling very spiritual today. I'm going to make a program for the rest of the year. You put dua al-jawsh and I'm going to recite it every day. And I'm going to recite Surah al-Baqarah. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then as soon as your mood and your spirituality fluctuates and goes down, you realize you can't do anything. And then you break that consistency, then you feel low, your mood goes bad, you're a failure, you can't do anything in life, you start criticizing yourself, and you leave the religion for a long time. You just do your wajibat now. So be careful of this. Don't look at, especially in Laylatul Qadr. A lot of us, on the nights of Qadr, they put the PowerPoint with all these a'mal. And then people sit here and they feel like they're forced to do this, right? You're not. If you realize, each of those a'mal is a separate hadith that the imam gave to a certain individual. So it's not like the imam told everybody, here's a list, do all this stuff. No. What did the scholars do? They looked at a hadith. One person asked the Imam al-Sadiq what to do. Imam al-Sadiq said, okay, recite the surahs in the night of Qadr. He told him only this thing. Another person asked him, or another imam, he told him another thing. So the imams didn't give him the list. He gave him one specific act. What we did is we got all of these, we put them together, and it's like we are told to do all of this at once, right? No, if I went to the imam and I asked him, what do I do on this night? He might tell me to do one thing or two things. He might tell me something that's not even on the list, right? So we have to keep in mind, it's not about how much we do. On this night of Al-Qadr, for example, yes, it's mustahab to stay awake all night. It's mustahab to do dua. It's mustahab to do Quran. It's mustahab to be awake and vigilant as much as you can. And you train yourself throughout Rajab and throughout Sha'ban to do this amal, to pray more, to be more focused in them. But again, if you can on that night to have one sincere prayer to God, it's much better than doing 100. Focus always on sincerity. That's because we're not buying and selling. It's not a stock market with God. We're not buying and selling. We're trying to build this pure, sincere relationship. God, I want to be closest to you. I want to do something from my heart, but really I can't read the whole dua al-jawshan. I can read 2 segments, 5 segments with focus. Okay, then do that. That doesn't mean that you always take the minimum. Sometimes you got to give yourself a push, yes. But don't push yourself too much that you break yourself, and don't hold back so much that you never progress in your life. Always look for that internal balance. So these are just a few words that I wanted to share with you, some things that might assist us during this month. It's a blessed month. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ability to get closer to Him during these months and to be able to do this in a rational and acceptable way. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
صلوات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا خيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي، ظلمت نفسي، ظلمت نفسي، وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته، وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته، وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك الغضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيتا أو تبعد من أدنيتا أو تشرد من آويتا أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمتا. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا وأشارت باستغفارك مرعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثور يسير بقاء قصير مدة. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الضليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني. صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتغلغل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك وباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجلى ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالعنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا رب 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 يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا رب 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 أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من عليه شكوت أحوالي يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكر، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر لي زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وذمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا رب نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا رب مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء، يا سابق النعم، يا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. صلوات.